Hey everybody, this is Joe Harper with Reformed Truther Ministries, and in this week's midweek video, I am going to be doing a book recommendation. So the concept of the midweek video is I take around 10 to 15 minutes and I speak about a concept that I find interesting. And in this week's midweek video, I'm going to be talking about this book, and this book is called War of the Ages by Dr. Gregory Reid, and the full title is War of the Ages, and the subtitle is A Complete Scriptural Guide to Confronting and Defeating Satan's Kingdom. So this book is a very thorough but also approachable introduction to spiritual warfare. And Gregory Reid, he's had a background in paranormal experience and deliverance ministries and demonology, but he's also been a youth pastor. So this is a really great book. This is the best book on spiritual warfare I've ever read. And what I really liked about this book is that he really approached it from a number of different angles at the same time. So on the one hand, he has a very practical pastoral side to the things he's talking about. He talks about how hidden sins in our lives or unresolved sins in our heart can open us up to the influence of the devil and evil and even demonization, demonic influence. And then on the other hand, he's talking about what are demons, demonology, expelling occult stuff from his life. So he really covered both sides of the issue very, very well. You have the very practical side of guarding our hearts, guarding our thoughts. And then on the other hand, he's really getting in depth about demonology. And so I really like that he really had both sides of the coin of spiritual warfare in one book. Like I said, this is the best book I've read on this topic, and I've really enjoyed it and even recommended this book to some friends who are currently reading it. And it's just been really, this is a book that I would say is going to be a book I'm going to recommend as a starting point for anybody getting involved in anything to do with the type of material I've been talking about with my ministry. I mean, with the pastoral practical sides, he's talking about sins in the heart that can open you up to demonic influence. He's talking about anger. He's talking about pride. He's talking about the sins of bitterness or self-pity or unforgiveness toward others. He talks about the dangers of gossip and division in churches. Very, very practical, very pastoral. How we need to guard our hearts, how we have to guard our minds, how that the devil and demons are trying to whisper thoughts into our brain. So that's one side of the coin that he's really tackling. And then on the other side, he talks about demonology. What are demons? And he talks about how he believes they are a different entity than fallen angels, that he believes they are the departed spirits of the Nephilim. Think concepts that we've talked about on this channel in relation to um, things we've talked about in relation to the Nephilim or the Genesis 6 narrative. He gets into all of that detail. And he talks about how he prefers the term demonization to possession. He talks about how there's levels of demonic influence that increase in intensity. So there's that influence, and you open up and there's a deeper affliction. And he says the very top level is that, quote, perfect possession, where the demon has inhabited the body of a human being. But he really talks about how you really open yourself up by degrees to that demonic influence. And it really starts as more of an influence, which turns into an affliction, which turns into that full on possession. It's really helpful to think of demonization in terms of a process of increasing influence that we open ourselves up to by being in sin, by not working through things, by not walking in the Spirit of God. That's really the process. And then in the other sections of the book, Gregory Reid really talks about in-depth influences to drive these things out. What do we think about expulsion, what's commonly called exorcism? And he goes into the Greek in the New Testament, very, very in-depth, very helpful. He talks about false religions in the book, like Islam, Buddhism, the New Age. He talked about the dangers of occult objects like Ouija boards in the book, or certain books or music that are sinful. He talks about cleansing all of that out of your home. So this book is very expansive. It's very thorough, and I found it very, very, very helpful. It's one of the best things that I've read on this topic. And I just think that this is going to be a book that people are going to find to be very helpful, whether they are going into in-depth paranormal ministry, deliverance ministry, anything like that, or just for somebody who's sitting in the pews of their churches and they want to protect their churches from harm or just in their own spiritual lives from harm. This is a book that pastors can read. This is a book that lay people can read. This is really a book that any Christian can really find benefit from. And I have no affinity with this author, so I'm just recommending this as a resource. This isn't something I'm trying to sell or anything like that. It's just a book that I found really helpful. And I think this should really be a starting place, even before going into more depth on some of these other exciting topics like giants or uh, cryptids, Bigfoot, stuff we've been talking about. This is really a good biblical starting point. He's even got quotes by guys like Charles Spurgeon in the book, or A.W. Tozer. So it's got a very biblical theological side. It's got a very practical side. And then he goes into a lot of depth about expelling out those demonic and occult influences. So all of that is really good, really helpful. So this is the book I'm going to recommend for our midweek video this week. Once again, War of the Ages: A Complete Scriptural Guide for Confronting and Defeating Satan's Kingdom by Dr. Gregory Reid. Very helpful. Guy's got a lot of experience. He's been on podcasts like Blurry Creatures. He's been in that Genesis 6 space with some of those other famous Nephilim guys, the Marzulis and the Derek Gilberts and the Judd Burtons of the world. So this is the book I'd recommend for this week. This is going to be the concept for this week's midweek video. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. So this is Joe Harper with Reformed Truther Ministries. God bless everybody. If you enjoyed this video, then check out our website at www.reformedtruther.com.